Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and welcome to my Aleph, our yacht. It's a pleasure to be here with Gabriel. As Fer mentioned, this is the first time that Aleph is getting involved with Formula One, and so far the experience has been amazing. We will talk a little bit about the connection that exists between the Aleph culture and how we do things, and the Kicksauber team, and eventually why we chose to partner with them. And also with Gabriel in particular is great to be able to talk. As you will hear, first, he's someone who comes from kind of like a similar origin as Aleph, because he's Brazilian. Aleph was started by Gaston Taratuta from Argentina, and so that part of being resilient, grinding, and knowing adversity is something that we share in common. But also, I'm amazed to meet you and also see, at your young age, how much you achieved. So it's really mind-blowing. So I want to propose, Gabriel, that we start this conversation by you telling us a little bit how this thing about race driving started, because I think it was very early in your life, right, that you started with that?
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me in the boat. And so I started when I was 6 years old in Brazil. My brother, he's 6 years older than me. Initially, he started racing when I was born, so he was 6 years old, and then he had a couple of tests, and then a friend of the family went to try the go-kart, crashed the go-kart, and then at the time we didn't have the money to get a new go-kart for my brother, so basically he stayed away from racing for quite a long time, but it was always a passion of him, and about my father as well. As a Brazilian, I think the hero of not only the Brazilians but a lot of people is Ayrton Senna. Everything he did for the country and everyone. So basically, my brother started racing. I used to go to the races in go-kart to watch him, and initially I liked racing, but what was my main thing and what made me want to start was to watch the other kids in the podium. That feeling of being rewarded, getting the trophy and being the best was something amazing for me since I was super young. It's a feeling that I wanted to have, because I was always outside of the podium watching, and I was like, I want to be there. So I started racing, and the passion came through, and that feeling of racing, I still have the feeling, and still in my mind, how was the first time I jumped in a go-kart when I was 6. I can still remember, the feeling, the smell of the engine and everything. It's quite a crazy thing because I was super young, but yeah. And then from there on, started racing in Brazil, never stopped. I was straight away, the year after I started, I think I was fighting for the Brazilian championship, and like big championships in Brazil. Obviously in lower categories, when you had 7 years old, you were competing against 7, 8, 9 years old kids. So yeah, and then I did until 12 years old, I did my career in Brazil, and I had a great time there. I won some championships, and my father is a bit of a crazy guy, so we always knew the target was to get to Formula One one day. And we had a driver coach his name was Francesco, and he had a lot of experience in the sport, and my father asked him one day when we were in the beach, if Gabriel wants to be in Formula One, what does he need to do? And then this guy said, look, he would need to go to Europe to race in Europe for the European and World Championship in go-karting. So my father, with the amazing idea, said, okay, so 1 month, pack your bags, you both are gonna live in Italy.
Tell us about, you wanted to be in the podium. How do you remember your first win?
I remember my first win, but the one that hurt me the most was my first Brazilian championship, because I started from the back and I was winning the race until the last corner, and then I got crashed. So, and that was the worst feeling in that moment, because I was so close to win, let's say, the biggest championship you can win in Brazil at such a young period of racing. And you know, I've never been able to win the championship again, obviously because I left Brazil early, but my first win was just a week before there was like an opening championship for that specific race, and I won in that track with the same drivers that were doing that championship, and it was such an amazing feeling. Like, you feel in the top, you know, it's like literally being in this boat and looking down. It's like being in the podium, and you see everyone there, and you see like people actually happy for you. My family, they were proud of me, and that's something I always looked after, you know, that I was making my parents proud of me. And I don't know, it was just a great feeling.
Great. Now we can see what it takes to eventually have a chance to get to Formula One. The competitiveness since very early on, and how, you know, losing by that little stuck with you. So tell us a bit about that experience, because obviously you went to Europe very young. You said that you were 11. You went with your father, but then the 1 month then became more permanent. How was that, and what was that experience of living, you know, away from your country, your family, your friends?
Yeah, so the idea was actually to stay. It was 1 month literally to organize everything, find a house, find all the documents, you know, because I was 11, and at the time my family was not going with me to Italy because they needed to work, let's say, to pay for the racing, because in motorsport that's how it works. You basically, or you have sponsors, companies that believe that your potential, you can be one day in a higher series and want to support you. In that time we didn't have any companies. In Brazil it's very difficult to find companies to support you when you are super young. I will mention some after that actually helped me, you know, when I was already in Formula 3 and Formula 2, some big banks and insurance companies that are still with me nowadays in Formula 1. But when I was that age, they needed to stay in Brazil working. So my father, my mom, my brother, and actually my brother was racing already 1 year in Europe, and he decided to stop because we could not have both of us racing in Europe, because it's very expensive, because we know that the money in Brazil is not valuable comparing to the European money. So basically he stopped racing. I was 11, and then he went back to Brazil. I went to Europe to race in go-karts, and I went with this guy that I said, Francesco. He was my driver coach at the time, and yeah, from there on was we followed a nice career. I had some great results.
I mean, obviously, for Gabriel to have made it to Formula One, it wasn't just by chance. His career is impressive. So obviously, from go-karts, you started then racing in Formula 4 or something like that, and then successively, when you went to Formula 3 on your rookie year, you won the championship. Then you went to Formula 2, and you also, on your first season there, you won the championship. So by then, probably that ambition you had when you were 5 or something, that you want to be at the podium, kind of like came as a realization. So tell us about that time, and obviously from there is your jump into Formula 1. What how was managing the expectations? Because I can imagine that when you won in Formula 3, how was for you going to Formula 2? What were you feeling? I mean, did you have any fears or concerns, or your mind was, I'm gonna win Formula 2 because that's the step I need to get to Formula 1?
Well, that's a very good question, I would say. I mean, first I want to touch in the resilience part you said, because I had 2 tough years at the beginning of Formula career. So for me it was very tough to go through these 2-3 years of tough seasons. And you know, you always need to perform in this sport, because if you don't perform, you are out. And then going to Formula 3, I had, you know, these difficult years, and maybe not a lot of people were trusting that I could be Formula 1 material. that I could be a Formula 1 driver, but just become a professional driver in any other series, that there is nothing wrong there. I have a lot of friends that do this and they are professional in the sport, but obviously the dream was always Formula 1, and then going to Formula 3, winning in my rookie season was very special because, you know, normally you take 2-3 years to win in this type of series. And I knew that Formula 1 was getting more and more difficult every single year to achieve, because, you know, so many young drivers were getting in and the very good ones were staying in the series. The paid drivers, let's say, were getting out, you know, because the sport was growing and the teams were not needing that much money anymore. So basically the spots were getting less and less difficult more and more difficult to get. And then, won F3, and then my expectations were super high. You know, going to Formula 2, I found a very good team to go. I got a contract with McLaren as a junior driver. That was a great opportunity for my development as a driver, and I learned a lot from them. And obviously they were investing a lot in my career as well. So that was a big help to go to Formula 2, as the season is very expensive there. And then I had a tough start of season because I think I put a lot of pressure on myself in that F2 beginning, you know, coming as an F3 champion, and then everyone saying that, oh, maybe you can be F2 champion, and only, I think, 2 or 3 drivers in history have done that. So I also put that pressure that I need to achieve that, I need to be one of those. And I think it was just too much. It was no need, because anyway, you have no pressure to perform in your first year in a series like this. Obviously you want to win, but if it happens, it's a plus. So I think I managed to have people around me that calmed me down and made me understand that I didn't need to put that much pressure on myself, that the results were going to come as a consequence of my work and potential. And season started to go up like a rocket ship. You know, we started winning a lot after I had this mindset shift, and I won F2 and I got my contract in F1. So it was, I think, everything very fast.
Very good. I want to send you back to a moment in your Formula 2 season, which is the Monza race. Tell us about that, and having heard about your story of what was the thing that you had regretted the most in your first season in go-karts, did that go through your mind as you were going through this Monza race?
Oh, you really follow the season, eh? You know a lot of... But what moment in go-kart you talking about?
But the one you said that basically you were about to win that race, and in the last turn...
Yes. Well, actually there was quite a similar race. And this is the type of race that you can make history, in the sense of, for those that don't know,
tell them, because people probably don't know about it.
That are mentioned in F2. I started last because I have done a mistake in qualifying in Monza. I spun by myself in a good qualifying, and I was last because I didn't manage to put a single lap on board. So, you know, it was the moment already that the season was going well, as I said, and I was catching the leader of the championship, and maybe that's mindset of, oh, I'm almost there, I'm almost leading the championship, came back to my mind. And I think I did this mistake in quali that cost me, when you start last in a weekend, you just expect to gain them as much position as you can, but you cannot do anything on that. You're still going to lose points to the leaders because they're always going to be in the front. So in the sprint race, I have done, I think, a good job. I finished P6, and then starting from 22nd. And then in this main race, I started 22nd, and I ended up winning the race. There was a big moment. I believe this was a big contribute to my F1 contract as well, because a lot of people started like, oh, this guy, maybe he can win Formula 1. And yes, definitely in this last corner in Brazil came up to my mind, and obviously I learned a lot since that first race I've done in Brazil, and I've covered all the mistakes I've done when I was younger. And I remember that to make a race like that, you need to make a perfect race, that you cannot slip in any mistakes. You need to cover all the possibilities to avoid crashes, that maybe in my first race I didn't, because maybe if I close the door and defend myself in the last corner, I wouldn't get crashed out of the corner. So, that type of learning I brought in that race, and I did everything well, and I managed to win the race. So it was one of the special moments of my career.
Fantastic. Well, let's come to Formula One. And obviously, as you said, I mean, those of you who follow Formula One probably understand how impossible it is to really get a seat on Formula One. So just that it's an enormous achievement. You were coming of winning 2 consecutive seasons, Formula 3, Formula 2. That, as you said, obviously made you Formula One material. Tell us a little bit about how that happened, because eventually there's probably other drivers that either have more money or can be perceived as talented as you. What was your approach towards that? Was that something that you felt that had to be given to you or not? What were the expectations coming to the beginning of the season and your debut in Formula One?
Well, I think I got lucky as well, in the sense that joining Sauber was joining Audi, so they wanted a young guy to represent also the brand in the future. And I believe there was many options on the table, because there is many other talented drivers that raced with me in all the series since go-karting, and they fully deserve a seat as well in Formula One for their talent. But I remember when I had a chat with Mattia Binotto, that is my boss, you know, in Audi. He's the head of the F1 project, and he was the one to hire me. And he told me, because initially I was not sure that I would get a Formula One seat. You know, it was, okay, maybe you get an Audi seat in 26, but next year you can be a reserve, and let's see what happens. Maybe you are still not ready yet, because normally you can stay 1 year as a reserve driver, learning and staying together in the F1 environment to learn, and when you get to Formula One, you perform. But they obviously never want to stay 1 year away of racing. So I told him, like, what do I need to do to prove that I am? And then I was still like P3 in the championship at the time, and he said, look, maybe if you win the championship, I give you a Christmas gift. And I was like, I understand, what is the gift? Is the seat. So it was a lot of pressure in that moment as well, that I understood that my thing was, you need to win the championship and then you get the seat. If not, what would happen? I really think he had his mind already that he would take me, but I think he wanted to see how I would behave in that moment, to test me as well. And I think as soon as he told me that, I had a race next week and I won. I think it was Monza actually. So yeah, it was
good way to prove it.
Yeah. And then after that, I was in the podium again, and then I took the lead of the championship, and then they signed me, and then I think I won the championship. So I did what he asked me to do, and obviously I feel like I deserve the seat, because I won the championship, and no one can say anything about it. Like, no one can say, oh, maybe the guy that won the championship didn't got the seats and you were P2 and you got it. So I mean, I feel like I did everything I needed to fill all the boxes to be there.
Well, congratulations on that. So now let's put you on your first race in Formula One this season. And just to give some context, I mean, I'm not an expert in Formula One, but I've been following it more and more in the last several years. This season, I think it's almost a record in the number of rookies that are racing. Many of them, I think, were competing with you last year in Formula 2. So they're all very young, talented drivers. I mean, obviously, tell us a little bit about, you know, how was experiencing the first few races, and you know, in a sport that, as you said, is so competitive, and I'm now seeing nowadays, I mean, drivers are being replaced after like a couple of races. It's amazing. I think it's not only the speed at which you guys drive, but how fast also things are changing, even with drivers. So how do you approach that, where in a sport that obviously requires so much precision, and I imagine that the pressure doesn't help to that. So how do you deal with that?
I would say I'm a lucky guy that I got, let's say, a very good contract with people that they really showed like they trust the process, and they understand that, you know, getting to Formula One, you are competing against the best drivers in the world. So you're competing against Verstappen, Hamilton, Alonso, all these guys. I can say name by name here, but then you need time. You cannot expect a rookie to get to Formula One and straight away just win races. And especially in Formula One, we don't have equal cars. We each of the teams build our own cars, and you expect the best of it. But nowadays in Sauber, we are making a lot of progress with our car, but still we are a team that we are not consistently in the points. And like now, Nico was able to score points in the last 2 races. I'm still pushing the best I can to get there. I'm learning a lot from him as well. But as a rookie, it's difficult. And I've seen drivers, as you said, that got kicked out of Formula One in less than 5 races. I mean, it's difficult to comment on that because every team has their ways of leading and choosing they want to stay or not. But Audi, Sauber was always very clear with me that I had my time to learn and to do well. And I think that was a good approach because I had been able to adapt very quickly to the F1 world and the car and being quick on pace comparing to Nico and everything. I feel because I didn't have this crazy pressure behind that is basically you have 5 races to perform, and if not, you're gonna get out of Formula One, and everything you dreamed your whole life to achieve is gonna be out in less than 3 months that you got to there. So I think that's not a nice way to get into a Formula One season, and I'm lucky again, as I said, to be in the position I am.
Very good. Let me tell you something. You weren't counting on the Aleph lucky charm. That's why Sauber has been performing so well compared to last year. Is on the one hand that you're part of the team, but also that Aleph is there on the car. What's the relationship that you have with the other racers that are kind of like of your same cohort? The ones that have just started. Are you guys friends? How do you view them? What's the attitude in order to eventually be able to perform better than them?
Well, we are friends until we crash. Then it becomes a complicated situation. The problem is that sometimes we take the same plane going back from the races, or you crash with someone and you need to spend all the time with them. But jokes apart, I think I have good relationship with most of them. I think Hadjar, that is another rookie that is doing extremely well in my view in Formula One in his first season. I think I never liked him before, the F1 season. He was the guy that finished second in F2, but we were competing, we came to the last round of the season equal on points. So was the closest F2 title decisive moment. And I think because we were both fighting, we couldn't look at each other's face almost, it was a very weird feeling. And obviously it's the competition, and you need to approach like that. You don't want to show any weakness, you don't want to show anything. In Formula One, I think is a bit different, as we are not fighting with him where we were not, because now we are coming back. So it's becoming again a fight with the RBs, the second team of Red Bull. But I believe I think when everyone gets to Formula One, we somehow manage to get closer to each other. Still, I don't have many friends in the grid. I have 2 good friends that I say it's Berman, I know him for a while, and Verstappen, he's a guy that I've always been practicing in the simulator together with him and everything. So he has been a big help in my career. And Fernando Alonso, because he's my manager. So it's these 3 guys, and the rest, you have a friendly relationship, but not too friendly. So I think that's how is it more or less.